Hey everyone, welcome back to Citywide Bytes. I'm your host, Max Bowen. In this episode, I'm talking to author Brad Barkley for his new book, The Real Life of Zara Kegg. We talk all about the role of cinema in this book. We also talk about themes of grief and mental health and how they're portrayed in the story. We also dive into the business side of things, talking about the YA industry, how it's changed over the years, and give a few important steps for those looking to break into the genre. Enjoy! All right. Well, Brad, I want to say first off, thank you so much for joining us. Reading about your book, The Real Life of Zara Kegg. I love the concept. The cover art is absolutely amazing. But the one thing that I really dug about this thing was that cinema plays a big role in this thing. So I like to kind of open by asking what role cinema plays in the book, how it's kind of factors into the story.
Yeah, I thanks for having me, first of all. And yeah, I I grew up on these movies, these sort of bad 50s, 60s Hammer movies, right? And this is kind of a slightly embarrassing story, but and this dates me a little bit, but I found out when I was a kid that you could check these movies out at the library on Super 8. And so my dad had a Super 8 projector for his work. So I'd be downstairs watching those movies in the basement by myself while the rest of my normal family was upstairs watching normal TV. I was down there by myself. So I've always loved those movies, and I knew I would write about them someday. So then, when I had the setting of this sort of deserted beach town in the winter, this dilapidated theater, I knew right away she was going to be showing those movies. And it plays several roles in the book and with the character. I mean, for one, the projection booth kind of gives her Zara a place to hide out from the world. She's in mourning. She's just lost her mom 3 years ago. Still hasn't figured out how to get back on track. Her dad is kind of checked out, and so this little plywood booth gives her a place where she can observe the world but not really participate in it. And two, the more I got into writing about that, the movies themselves are interesting. As cheesy as a lot of those 50s and 60s sci-fi and horror movies are, and some of them are good movies. The first one I mentioned in there is Carnival of Souls, and that's actually a really good movie. Um, but a lot of times those movies were sort of stand-ins for people's fears at the time about the Cold War. Something coming from the sky that's going to destroy you, and we have to band together to fight it. I mean, that was sort of over and over and over again the theme of those movies. So just the idea that movies can kind of hide our fears, and I think that's true for Zara as well. Monsters in her life, monsters on the screen. Um, so yeah, I mean, it was a combination of I like to give characters jobs. A lot of times in fiction, characters have no apparent jobs, right? And the dilapidated theater, the old movies, and it just all sort of came together and fit.
That's a good point. How many books have I read where the characters just seem to just have all this time to just investigate a mystery or learn about themselves or check out some kind of haunted house. It's a good point you make.
Right. It's so many books. It's Thursday afternoon and they're in their apartment having an argument with their wife. I mean, it's like,
Wait, should you work?
where's work? Right.
Maybe that's why they're arguing. The
Yeah,
guy doesn't go out and
exactly.
give himself a job. Maybe that's it.
Right.
um, but I also want to ask about the different themes that you kind of take on in this book. Like we've talked about, like Zara's her grief from the passing of her mother, her sort of avoidance of the outside world. But what are some of the other like themes that this book kind of takes on?
Uh, Probably the main one is, besides grief and loneliness, not fitting in. Um, I this is for a young adult audience. I think adults would get as much from this book, but you know, if not every young adult understands grief, they certainly understand loneliness and seclusion and not feeling like they fit in. I don't think there's any teen who hasn't had feelings of that at some point. Um, and I think the other major theme going on here is mental illness, which I wanted to write about that because that's been something that has affected my family, specifically my father. I can say now he's no longer here, and growing up with that, and so I wanted to. I don't think there's a lot of YA books that really take that on kind of head on, and so I wanted to write about that honestly, but with sensitivity. So,
Hmm.
that was probably the hardest part of the book was handling those issues in that way. And also, it's in large part a comic novel. So, trying to kind of combine these themes of grief and mental illness with what I hope is a funny book. Um, was hard, but I think that's how life is. Life is always the funny and the tragic sort of blended in together.
Hmm. Now, you mentioned earlier about taking on mental health, mental illness, both honestly but also sensitively. How do you find that balance?
I think that to me the sensitivity is in the honesty, you know, not trying to, I think sometimes in books or especially movies, it's sort of almost romanticized in a way, or like trumped up, or um, you know, what can happen. Like I tell my student, my writing students sometimes, if you give a character cancer in a book, that's really hard to do. It can be done, but it turns it into a cancer book, so that becomes the major central, the central setting point of the story is it's a cancer book, and you don't want your story to be about a thing. You want your story to be about your characters. So, um, I think it was that combination of presenting it honestly. I mean, the way I grew up with it and what I saw every day, um, but also not sort of overblowing it or romanticizing it in that way. Sometimes characters with mental illness are presented as sort of tragic and romantic in a way.
Hmm.
And Zachary's not. I mean, he's just presented as a character who's himself, and this is just sort of one facet of who he is.
That sounds like a really good skill to have to be able to present a character with a condition like cancer, but to not make them the cancer patient. They are the patient. They are the person who happens to have cancer.
Right.
But and I like that you kind of pass that lesson along to your students. But did that take you a while to kind of develop that balance as a writer?
I don't think uh it was the little bit of a stumbling block in this book, and I don't mean stumbling block in the sense that I messed it up. It just I worked a little more slowly writing those sections, I guess, because I was being a little more careful
Sure,
about it.
sure.
But yeah, like I said, most of my work over time, and this is my eighth book, so over time, it's always described as uh, tragic and funny or sad and funny.
Hmm.
And, um, you know, I mean, even in graduate school, I was told by instructors, well, you got to pick one or the other. And it's like, um, you know, the Greek masks, one's comedy, one's tragedy. And it's like, but that's not how life is, you know. And the story I like to tell is, if you ever want to hear people laughing their guts out, go to, I grew up in the South. Go to a gathering after a funeral in North Carolina where everybody brings a covered dish. Everybody gathers, they're telling stories about the deceased and just bent over with laughing, telling stories. And it's a kind of release, you know. Um,
Yeah.
and I think, people always find humor in the most difficult situations. I think there
Mhm.
always is humor in the most difficult situations. And life always puts those two together. So why shouldn't writers put those two together?
That makes sense. Yeah, it really does. All right. I want to ask next about the cover for this book because the cover just drew me right in. I love this cover.
I do
Um,
too.
how did this one come to be?
Regal House has a great in-house graphic designer, and um, she did an amazing job. It's funny, especially the colors of this cover, the just the color scheme. It just pops so well, and
Mm,
that's what booksellers want. They want something that 10 feet away,
yeah.
you'll see it on the shelf and say, "Oh, what's that?"
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's funny because like the old adage is to don't is to not judge a book by its cover, but yeah, you're gonna like,
right.
and you see a cover like yours, like I don't know what this is, but I want to check it out.
Right. And a lot of the story is in that cover. I mean,
Hmm.
there's Zara, there's the palace, there it's run down. It's funny though, part of the contract with Regal House, they said once the cover's done, no changes because it takes them a lot of work, right?
Sure, I'll bet. Yeah.
And the graphic artist has to actually read the book. So there's that she has a lot of books to read,
Mm.
get a feel for them, sort of storyboard an idea and all of that. So they said once the cover's done, it's done. And they sent me the first mock-up of the cover, and Zara was wearing like a tank top and shorts. And I wrote to my editor and I said, I know you said no changes, but this book is set in the dead of winter, right?
I love that. I know you said no changes, but here we
Right.
are.
But I know you said this, but
All right.
yeah, right. This is set in the dead of winter, and she's in a tank top outside in shorts, and she's like, that's actually a good point. Let
Yeah.
me talk to the designer. So they actually, for the first time in history, redid a cover to put her in a jacket and jeans.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Like maybe Zara just really, really likes the cold. Who knows, you
really,
know?
right, right.
um, one thing I really dug about it too is that it really just looks like a painting. I love that feeling of it, that feeling of just like organic art. That just really, really got me.
I love that too. And their depiction of the Palace Theater, I mean, it's exactly how I pictured it in my mind.
Sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Also, having a job where you get to read books and then make covers, I want that job.
Yeah,
How do I get
yeah,
that
that'd be
job?
great, right?
That
Yeah.
sounds like a great gig. But you've also got a playlist to go with this book, which I think is such a cool concept. This is about 2 hours, 60 minutes long. You can find it on Spotify. It's called Zara's Spotify playlist. Uh, why do this, and how'd you pick the music for it?
I I like the idea of, well, several reasons. That's an interesting question. I think to me at that age, books were so important. Books were lifesavers for me when I was that age or even younger. Um, but so is music. Music was extremely important to me then, still is now. And so I wanted to have a lot of music in her world. I wanted the not just me to create a soundtrack, but I wanted sort of as you're reading, there's almost a soundtrack in the back of your head. Um, so yeah, I tried to pick songs that would be things she might be listening to at her age. I don't think Zara or Zachary are the type of kids that are just gonna be listening to what's top 40, sort of what the corporate music industry is
Hmm.
going to tell them that they like. They're going to seek out, indie bands and small bands and so on and find their own way with that. So I was looking for that. So things that she might actually be listening to at her age, and then things that sort of captured the vibe of the book. And then if you've listened to the Spotify list, interspersed in there are trailers from some of these old movies. The Mummy, The Blob, so on. And I thought, well, that is part of the soundtrack of Zara's life, and wanted to include that. Little interesting side note. There's a song on there called "I Really Like You" by Short Fictions. That's my daughter's band out of Pittsburgh. Yeah, and they've actually
So
done,
cool.
I know, they've done very well for themselves. They started playing, in the indie music scene, playing in basements for five people.
Yeah.
And now they get invited to these festivals and they play in front of 1,000 people and they've got 3 or 4 albums out. They've toured the UK. They've toured the Pacific Northwest. So they've done really well. And so yeah, that's her. She's the bass player and lead screamer. There's some
That's a
screaming
great
in
title to have.
the
Lead screamer for a band. That's so cool. Also, Short Fictions is a great band name. And I have to wonder, does that tie into you at all?
No,
Because
it
like,
doesn't. Actually, the band was put together by a friend of hers, and
oh, cool.
he picked the name.
Huh.
So just serendipitous. But
Really?
yeah,
Yeah, wild coincidence. Yeah,
yeah,
and for the folks who are looking this thing up, I actually made a slight mistake. The playlist is called "The Real," as in movie reel, Life of Zara Kegg. So look that
right,
one up. Check out the music. I see the B-52s are on this, which
right.
I love seeing that. I'm a huge fan of that band. So very cool choice there.
That song from the B-52s, that song sounds so much like a B movie
Yeah.
that
Yes.
when I first started this book and I thought I'm probably going to do a playlist, that was the first song I thought of including on the playlist.
Yes, that's
Yeah,
a good pick. That's a
yeah.
good pick. Well, Brad, we have been talking about just the book and everything about it, but I also want to talk about the business of writing. Of course, writing it is a business.
Yep.
And for this one, I want to ask about for those who are looking to specifically do like YA fiction, what are some good first steps to kind of get them, rolling?
The main thing I would say is make sure you've read a lot of YA fiction, so you kind of know that genre and sort of the books that are important. I mean, you could start with Catcher in the Rye and move all the way up through John Green or Sarah Dessen, somebody like that. Um, and so sort of just knowing the landscape of the genre, first of all. And then uh, for me, as far as the writing, it's the same approach as if I'm writing a book for adults, which I do as well, or short stories. It's just all about the character and inhabiting that character and knowing that character.
Hmm.
Sometimes people ask me, what do you change when you're writing YA in terms of approach? And my answer is really nothing other than YA books are shorter, and so I have that sort of page length in mind as a target. But other than that, as far as approaching the writing, the story, the conflict, the themes, the ideas, it's all feels the same to me. Um, and as far as the business side, it's a good time for YA. It's that's kind of YA books always existed. I just mentioned Catcher in the Rye. A Separate Peace was an important book to me when I was a kid. That's a YA book. But that was a term sort of created by marketers, not by writers. Um,
Oh, huh.
you used to go to Barnes and Noble and a book like Zara or a book like Separate Peace or something would be in the children's book section. And of course,
Hmm.
teens would never find it because they wouldn't be caught dead walking into the children's book section,
It's
right?
just like by accident, that's
Right.
it.
So back in the day, they had to be handed books like this by a teacher or a librarian or something like that. So now they've got their own section of Barnes and Noble and they
Huh.
can go browse books. But uh, but yeah, so it's a good time. It's a niche that's found its own path and
Mhm.
so there's a lot of indie presses out there um, looking for YA. A lot of Big Five presses are still publishing YA.
Hmm.
And you just got to find a press or a contest or an agent who's interested in representing that.
Hmm. What would you say about like overcoming rejection? Because I know from a lot of writers, like rejection's the name of the game, basically. If you're starting out, you send out like 100 letters, you get back 100 zeros. What's your advice for just saying, for just like getting over that and keeping going?
Uh, Develop a thick skin.
Mm.
That's about it. Faulkner famously said the writer lives in an atmosphere of rejection. Um, and
Oh, accurate,
it,
accurate.
it's funny. When uh, when I was in graduate school, I shared a TA office with three other writers, and we started. This is back when they would mail you a pay. That's just how old I am. They would send you a paper rejection in the mail,
Hmm.
and we started taping our rejection slips to the
Yeah.
to the wall just as a defiant, anti-trophy. And uh, by the time we left there after 4 years, that wall was covered floor to ceiling about
Oh,
five deep, about five rejection slips deep.
oh wow.
Yeah, between the four of us. So yeah, I'll say this, at some point when your writing is good enough, it becomes all about taste above that, right? So in other words, in the early going of your career, you might get rejected because your work just isn't there yet, right? You don't quite have the chops yet. But once you do, then it's just getting it in front of the right person, whether it's an editor of a magazine, an agent, an editor at a publishing house. Um, you know, I get rejection. I mean, I have a novel my agent's shopping around right now, and we've had quite a few rejections on it. And a lot of them say, I love this, but it's not quite right for us. So
Hmm.
there's a lot of that. They may be
Yeah.
lying. They maybe they hate it.
Maybe there's like being polite. Yeah, you never know.
Right. But I think that's more often true than not. Like,
That makes
like,
sense. Yeah.
they like it, but it just doesn't fit into what they're looking for right now.
Yeah,
So you
exactly.
just got to stay at it. Rejection's part of the game, and so you're just playing the game. Send it back out there.
Hmm. Now, I did not know, first off, that YA was like a marketing creation. I just remembered it appearing one day, because like, when I grew up, there was no YA, it didn't exist. There was just kids, adults. That's it.
Right.
But what would you say is really popular in YA right now? Is it a certain genre that's really kind of standing out?
It's still a lot of fantasy,
Mm,
a lot of supernatural. I mean, that influence of the double whammy of Harry Potter and the Twilight series is
yeah.
still it's still there. I mean, it's been a minute, but it's still out there. So there's still, um, even with teaching my undergraduates, I sometimes feel like, if I have to read one more vampire or Magic King, I'm gonna just quit. But right.
Great. One
Um,
more time, guys. One more time, and I'm out.
right. And I tell my students, I say, real people are actually way more interesting than vampires. There's
Yes.
one thing that's weird about vampires. There's a million things that's weird about real people. But yeah, that influence is still out there. More and more, there's sort of like a magic realism, so
Hmm.
it's sort of based in the real world, but magic has its influence. So it's not full on, these are, witches, or these are warlocks, like sort of in the Harry Potter world. It's more sort of magic light, I guess.
Hmm.
Um, that's still out there. But what I write is considered literary YA. It's probably the smallest niche of that branch, but those books still get published. You know,
Yeah.
Sarah Dessen, mentioned before, is sort of one of the OGs of literary YA fiction, and she just has a brand new book out, so it's still
Cool.
getting published. Yeah.
I like that. Yeah, I think I see that a lot with like comics too, because I'm a huge like comic reader, and I think that like YA comics, they're really big right now. You've seen a lot of those getting published, and many I would say, are in the realistic genre though. You're seeing just like slice of life kind of stories.
Right, right. And I've seen that trend teaching. The weird part about teaching is I get older every year and the students are always the same age. So so I get to see trends develop over time. And that's been one, I never used to hear students talk about comics. And now more and more I hear students say, I want to write for comics or I want to write graphic novels.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and so yeah, that's really come on in a big way. And I'd say the last 10 years or so for sure.
Yeah. Actually, that reminds me of a comic I recently finished. It's called Love and Wicked Things. And that I think falls into the magical realism because it is a world where magic is a thing, but it's not like, good versus evil,
Right, right.
magical warlord kind of stuff. It's a lot more subtle, and it deals with the real interactions of real people. So I think I kind of see what you're talking about there.
Right. And I think that's especially for young adults, I think that's a combination of the world does seem magic in some ways magical. It's still strange at that age. It's still you're still learning new things, you're discovering new things.
Hmm.
And then I think it's sort of wish fulfillment. Like if I could just wave my hand and make this person disappear from my life, that's what I would do.
Oh boy.
Right. So yeah, I can understand that appealing, especially to that age group.
Yeah, it's like a publisher who rejected my book. Away you go.
Right, right. A critic gave me a bad
Exactly.
review.
Critic movie 1 star review.
Poof.
Goodbye.
Right, right.
Oh boy. Well, Brad, we could spend all day talking about the industry, about your books, but we are bringing this thing to a close. And the thing that we always wrap it up with is what is next for you?
Uh, well, right now, my wife and I are packing boxes because we're getting ready to sell our current house and move. So
Ooh, yeah, it's a big thing.
that's a big thing, big horrible thing.
Yeah, moving
Yeah,
suck. It
right.
always does.
But I do have, like I said, I have a finished novel for adults. My agent is shopping around, and I'm thinking about uh, once we're settled, what my next writing project is going to be. I've got a couple ideas in mind for an adult novel, and I'm I've even been kicking around. I'm sort of philosophically opposed to sequels. I think, once the story's told, it's told. But I keep having the nagging feeling that Zara's story isn't quite over yet. So,
Oh,
depending on whether any demand for that exists, I may be thinking about a sequel to this book.
I love it. I love it. Well, folks, we've told you everything about this. Now, here's what you do. You go to bradbarkley.com, Barkley. Everything is there. Check out his books, The Real Life of Zara Kegg. Check out the playlist. What's your favorite song? We want to hear all this. And Brad, thank you once again for doing this, and certainly looking forward to the next time we get to talk.
All right. I appreciate you having me, and thanks for the great questions.
And that brings this episode to a close. I really hope you enjoyed the episode and picked up a few things along the way. If you want to support the show, please like this episode and share as much as you can. If you want to check out other kinds of episodes, you can find that right here. And to subscribe, it's right there. This has been Citywide Bytes, and I'll see you all next time.